Hi. When we benchmark stock performance, we consider both return and risk. So in this block, I compared the risk-adjusted return of various equities, including Kospi, Samsung, Hyundai, for the last 2 decades to understand risk and reward of investment into those assets. First of all, here is the graph of price action of those individual assets. So if we look at Kospi and Hyundai and Samsung, starting from 2004, which this benchmark was started, it was uptrend. And the Kospi, if you look at Kospi chart, during the 2008 financial crisis and COVID, it was down. There was a throw-off, but it was up again during the COVID period and now down to 2,690. But this price action is difficult to compare the relative return of those assets. So next, here is the relative return calculated through price of current period minus price of previous period divided by price of previous period. So let's compare those assets of relative returns. So I filtered Kospi, Hyundai, and Samsung. In this chart, we can see for the last 2 decades, the return has moved during the 2012 to 14. Hyundai performed really well, but again, during the COVID period, Samsung outperformed Hyundai and Kospi, and still the outperformance is ongoing at this moment. So the current the return of Hyundai is 247% and Kospi return is 157% and Samsung return is 360%. Let's move on to see the risk of those investment into the asset. Drawdown is really useful indicator to understand the downside risk over the period. By calculating high price, peak price minus current price divided by peak price. So let's compare some of the drawdown of individual assets, including Hyundai and Samsung. If you look at the downtrend chart displayed as gray, we can see that drawdown of Hyundai during 2009 was minus 54%, and during the COVID, it was down to minus 55%, 62%. And looking at the Samsung drawdown, during 2008, it was minus 41%, and during the COVID, the drawdown was around minus 22, minus 16, and at this moment, the recent period, drawdown was dipped into minus 34%. How about the Kospi? Let's look at Kospi drawdown during financial crisis of 2009. It was down to minus 47%. And during the COVID, it was down to minus 25, and now it was down to minus 24%. So we can check the downside risk by drawing the drawdown and come up with maximum drawdown. After that, volatility-related metrics have been calculated as well. So to come up with volatility risk, Sharpe ratio is a widely used indicator. So to come up with Sharpe ratio, annualized return and annualized volatility was calculated first. And then annualized return divided by annualized volatility. Sharpe ratio was calculated. Here is the result table. So looking at Samsung and Hyundai, annualized return is 8.7% and 7.8%, and annualized volatility is 18 versus 16. So by calculating the Sharpe ratio, we can check the Samsung Sharpe ratio is bigger than Hyundai. So the less Sharpe ratio means volatility is bigger. So we can check using the annualized volatility and the annualized return. And by calculating Sharpe ratio, we can check how is the risk considered return of individual asset. So I hope this blog is useful to understand the return and also the risk considered return of stock investment.